We have 6 more members, each have different specialties, and then we also have like we all have our own like collaborators and like contractors, that we pretty much we have like space and industrious. So it used to be they literally just closed the one for Aspen Hour. The farmers market is downtown. So that's down there. It's like a shared space. But the one we were originally at for here was across the street on our spot. Like downtown. And it's like a so we had space there. And that turned so good. Everybody was just running. And now it's like we keep like that's our home base conference room. But I think we're gonna move to a new place. There's a yeah. So I think we might have space there, but
Can you just like tap the mic a few times? Because I need to see whether the audio that I'm receiving is from the mic or from someone else. Oh, hello, Emily. How's it going?
I haven't seen you in a minute. I just want to say hi.
I'll say hi in a second. Oh, Mr. Wade himself. Oh, Gonzalo. So is audio coming out of here?
Yes.
All right. And the music that's playing, is that also coming out of here or no? because I need to figure out.
Test. Good evening, guys, everyone. Y'all sound like y'all got full. Was the food too good? We're glad to have you. My name is Billy Lane, and I am honored to serve as the Executive Director of Inner City Community Development Corporation. I'm also a proud board member of the Dallas Housing Coalition. First, we want to thank each of you for joining us this evening as we hear from Mr. Missing Middle. I think we just gave him a nickname, Mr. Missing Middle, housing himself, Mr. Dan Parolek. We are super encouraged by tonight's turnout. It's a good turnout, and hope you enjoyed learning something new about housing. We'd like to extend our gratitude to all of our co-sponsors and co-hosts, including Dallas Area Habitat for Humanity, Options Real Estate, Texans for Housing, Greater East Dallas Chamber of Commerce, Urban Land Institute, Dallas-Fort Worth, and AIA Dallas. Now I'm curious. From Dallas City Councilmember Chad West office and Jaime Resendez's office. Thank you for joining us tonight. Today's event is being live streamed to the Dallas Housing Coalition's Instagram, X, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube channels. We encourage you to tag us on social media in your stories and posts, and join the dialogue online using the hashtag Dallas Talks Zoning. Dallas Talks Zoning. We're not able to share the slides from tonight's presentation unless your bid is high enough. That's a joke, come on now. But you can go back and watch this presentation again later on your social media channels, and we'll be sending out follow-up to subscribe to Opticos for future newsletters. Lastly, tonight's program is brought to you in partnership with the City of Dallas Planning and Development. To give a few remarks as one of the sponsors, in just a moment we're going to welcome Monty Anderson, President of Options Real Estate Investment, a multi-service real estate firm specializing in developing sustainable neighborhoods in Southern Dallas and northern Ellis counties. And also, we're going to welcome in just a moment Miss Felicity Maxwell, who is the Executive Director of Texans for Housing. Texans for Housing advocates for changes in law to make it easier to build housing in Texas in proximity to the daily needs, resulting in greater affordability, lower tax burdens for homeowners, and lower environmental costs. Please join me. Give a warm applause to Monty Anderson and Felicity Maxwell.
Howdy, welcome. When Brian called me and said Dan was coming to town, it was the easy thing to say yes to his sponsorship. So how could you not sponsor the guy who's really been the leader in this country in changing the conversation on the missing middle housing in walkable communities? So I'm glad to be here tonight. Thank you, Dan, for coming.
Yes, thanks so much to everybody who's put together this program, and particularly Brian and the Dallas Housing Coalition. We're so glad to be a part of this and sponsor this because not only is Dallas having these conversations about zoning, so is the rest of Texas. So y'all are really showing us what leadership looks like by convening events like this and having experts come and talk to us about changes here in Dallas as well as across our state. So thanks so much for hosting us and allowing us to be a part of this. And my pleasure is to actually introduce Emily Liu, who's going to give us the introduction to our keynote speaker. Emily is with the Dallas Housing Department, the City of Dallas Planning and Development, who's leading a much needed update to the Dallas Development Code. And to introduce our keynote and tell us more about Dallas zoning reform, I'd like to welcome to the stage Emily Liu. Emily serves as the Director of Planning and Development Department for the City of Dallas. She's a national leader in urban planning design with over 30 years of professional experience across Texas, Kentucky, Illinois, and Ohio. Prior to her work at the City of Dallas, Emily was a leader and planning director for Louisville Metro Government in Kentucky, and we're so lucky to have Emily here as an expert to get us set up for this evening. Thank you. Emily, come on up.
Wow, great turnout tonight. Thank you for coming, first of all. And I'm sure many of you have heard the term missing middle housing, right? But do you know who coined that term? And who started a movement that has influenced communities across the country and around the world? It is our speaker tonight. Good evening, everyone. My name is Emily Liu, Director of Planning and Development with the City of Dallas. It is truly an honor to introduce our national speaker, Parolek. Dan is a nationally recognized architect and urban designer. I really have the privilege of knowing Dan for many, many years and have followed his work closely, including the opportunity to collaborate with him on several important projects. Dan is also the founding principal of Opticos Design, a firm known for leading work in urban placemaking, innovative housing policies, and zoning reform. I want to emphasize that Dan coined the widely used term missing middle housing and has become the leading voice of a movement that is shaping cities across the country and around the world. His book, Missing Middle Housing, Thinking Big and Building Small, was named one of the Planetics' top planning books. He has been featured in many high-profile publications, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, Next City, and Professional Builder, just name a few. He recently presented on missing middle housing at the Chicago Humanities Festival. Dan also co-authored the book Form-Based Code, which Planetics called one of the top planning books of 2007, and co-founded the Form-Based Code Institute. In 2023, Dan was voted one of the Planetics' 100 most influential urbanists, past and present. I like to say his work is creative, innovative, and diverse, that across both public and private sector, including the master plan, building type design, and architecture for Cul-de-sac, Tempe, Arizona. That project will be the largest car-free community in the nation when completed. His work also includes the country's first missing middle housing neighborhood in Omaha, Nebraska. I wish I had one of this project to bring him back to design one of this for the city of Dallas. And also his work including a citywide missing middle housing plan for Sacramento, California, as well as one of the most advanced form-based code work in Cincinnati, Ohio. Those are just some examples in the United States. His work also touched internationally, so there's work he did in other countries as well. Prior to funding Opticos Design, Dan worked with Robert A. Amster in New York City on a broad range of major civic and residential projects. Dan holds a Bachelor of Architecture from the University of Notre Dame and a Master of Urban Design from the University of California, Berkeley. Dan loves to travel internationally. particularly in Italy. And sometimes we text sometimes, and sometimes try to reach him. He's not available because he's traveling. Okay, now please join me in welcoming Dan Parolek.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. I'm always, when somebody picks my long bio, I'm always a little bit embarrassed and think I wish I'd sent them the shorter one. That was probably the best intro I've gotten. I've worked with Emily. We've done a lot of things together, starting in Louisville, stuff with APA National. So it's great to be in Dallas, hosted by the Dallas Housing Coalition in the city to have a missing middle discussion. In 2015, I was here for the Congress for New Urbanism's annual Congress, and I had the fortune to lead a missing middle walking tour in the Bishop Arts neighborhood. And that research building up to that walking tour, if anybody knows Bishop Arts, and I'll just say that that's the neighborhood I know the best because I've done this twice now. It's a learning laboratory of historic examples of missing middle housing. So if you haven't explored Bishop Arts, I highly encourage you to, and I'm happy to share the walking route and the destination of those types. But so I've been here a number of times for various conferences. I've now done the missing middle walking tour twice. So I'm thrilled to be back to sort of have this big picture discussion about missing middle housing and how cities across the country are using it and how developers are delivering it when cities eliminate the barriers for these housing types. So what I love about, and one of the primary reasons I created the concept of missing middle housing in 2011 was I realized that we needed a different way to talk about housing in our communities. And this was one example that I found on a walking tour in Sacramento, California that sort of emphasized why we need to think differently about housing. And so this was a beautiful courtyard housing type, right? 2 stories, very approachable, really high quality place to live. And I usually do this isn't a complete planning group, but just for those of you who work in development, planning, architecture, can any of you just throw out a number of what you think the density is of this building type? Throw a number out, unless you've seen this before. 36. Too low. Anybody else?
60.
I heard, what did I hear in the back?
60.
60, too low. Oops.
Oh.
We'll continue this. Okay, so everybody's way too low. This housing type generates a density of 90 dwelling units per acre, which completely blows people's minds because most cities' codes, especially from a smaller town, caps out high density at like maybe 18 units per acre, maybe 20. And this idea that our system has failed to deliver. All of these great historic types were built prior to zoning in place, and we forced a system on top of them that doesn't allow more of them to be built. And so this sort of just reinforces this idea of needing to shift the way we talk about housing, because the form and the scale and the livability of this type, people can really get behind. So that's the real premise here in sort of why we created missing middle housing. Can the tech people come up and swap out the pointer? So instead of, if you go into a community as you're starting a conversation about the need for these housing choices, part of it's that if you've ever heard me talk before or read the book, is like, I always tell cities that you can't use that scary D word or density at all. Because the majority of people that live in your communities, the second you say that D word, like their defenses go up. So instead you approach them with this idea of form, scale, and typology, which is inherent in the missing middle housing. So there's this very basic premise of almost everybody loves the cottage core, right? This is a cottage core example, designed by a great firm called Union Studio. That's a case study in my book. And that even this most simple missing middle housing type is illegal in most cities for a number of different reasons. So part of it's like, let's just start being a little bit more logical in the way that we plan for and regulate missing middle housing. Oops. There we go. So why is this conversation so important? I think it's always good to start about this. I think a lot of this you might be aware of, but that is not missing middle housing. That's pretty nice though. I could sit and meditate. Okay, third try. Bear with us. So there are a lot of different reasons why this is really important, but I'd like to start with this because the why is just important as the what. So if you didn't know, there's been a really dramatic shift in household demographics, so this doesn't happen overnight, obviously, but it really caught the development industry, cities, a little bit off guard, because did you know that 1 in every 3 households is a single person? And do you think that all of the housing that we're planning for and building is meeting the needs of a single person household? Do you think 1/3 of the housing that we're building is for single person households? Absolutely not. And then by 2025, 75 to 85% of households will not have children. So that's why I like this background image of the Leave It to Beaver 1950s nuclear family that almost doesn't exist at all anymore, but we're still building housing for that family, right? And then by 2030, 1 in 5 Americans will be over 65, right? We have a rapidly aging population, and this is why AARP is such a big advocate for missing middle housing now. And obviously, increasing cultural diversity, where the cultures actually live multi-generationally by choice. And I can tell you that we're not delivering multi-generational housing, and people in those cultures are just making do. So there's a lot of reasons in terms of those demographics that we need to be thinking differently about the way we plan for and deliver housing on that range. The second reason why is that American households, now a majority of American households, over 50% of households want to live in a walkable location by choice. And only 8% of our built environment delivers that. So this tremendous gap is where missing middle fits in. And in addition to wanting it, they'll actually pay a premium for it. So when developers are delivering it, they're performing very well. Is it possible for me to move my computer to the podium so I can just use my computer? I'm sorry, I've never had this bad of a technical issue.
It's back there. It's back behind stage. Yeah, go out there. He's back there.
Give me 2 minutes. I'm going to become tech spoiled.
Check, check, check. Okay, it seems to be picking up from here though.
Hey, Amanda? Do you have my backpack? Thanks.
Privilege, join it.
Okay, thanks for your patience. We're going to do this advancing manually. So back to this idea of why this topic is so important. And obviously, all across the country, the housing affordability crisis has touched every corner of the country, including mills. So, right, missing middle housing is not a silver bullet to address the affordable housing problem, but it's one tool that every city really needs in their toolbox. Next slide. The other thing is, right, we need to acknowledge that a lot of our planning and policy related to housing really was biased against Black and brown households historically. So we need to acknowledge that and make sure that the decisions we're making to deliver these choices take advantage of that and think about that and make sure that it's equitable across the communities. Next slide. Okay, this camera was built the same year that zoning was first put in place. Think about that. Are any of you still using this camera? We're still using an operating system that's over 100 years old to try to solve 21st century problems, housing problems, right? And so this isn't about making minor tweaks. This is actually, we need to think in a very major way about changing that operating system. Next slide. Okay, so what is missing middle housing? Next slide. For us, the definition of missing middle housing is really important because a lot of times it immediately shifts to the conversation about middle income. And that's important, but first and foremost for us, this is about form and scale. And so this idea that they're house scale buildings, and think about that, they never get bigger than the scale of a medium-sized house, but they have multiple units inside of it. And that's really, really important to build support and understanding for these types of projects. So take that, if you're gonna take one thing away from this, take away that idea of house scale. Next slide. Well, what does that mean? If you're not a technical person, like, you could walk by this triplex and never notice that it's not a single family home, right? It looks, it behaves like a single family house. It just happens to have multiple units inside of it. So that's a really key part of this. And we find that using photographs, seems very basic, is an excellent way to educate, build support, and respond to concerns about, having missing middle types in a community. Next slide. So it's, for the planners in the room, it's about a maximum height, which we typically regulate, but it's also about a maximum width of the building along a street, and then how deep the building goes into a lot. So just plant that seed and we can talk about it a little bit later. So this is one of the streets. It's Bishop Avenue in West Neely, right? You look at this block, what I love about an aerial photograph, like you can tell that that's, right, this is a multi-unit, call it an apartment, I don't like that term either, but that's bigger than house scale, but you can't actually tell, there's actually almost 3/4 of these buildings are missing middle, and then there's some missing middle, or some single family sprinkled into it. So it's, once again, it has the same footprint of missing middle. Next slide. How does missing middle then fit into this affordability, or what we call attainability conversation? We created this diagram that shows on the far left, your left-hand side, there's subsidized affordable housing, or the capital A, we call it affordable, that needs public subsidy to be delivered at an affordable price point. That's not missing middle, but it's important. On the far right-hand side is just the strategy that we just simply need to increase the volume of housing that we're delivering based on the shortage. And then the missing middle fits right in the middle of that barbell of affordability or attainability, and we call it affordable by design. Because if you can regulate appropriately for it, and deliver it smartly, design it smartly, it will deliver attainability. So really excellent way to deliver affordability by design. Next slide. I wanted to introduce another concept because this will be important as you discuss your zoning code update. It's missing middle housing actually stops for us at 2 to 2.5 stories. Anything bigger than that should not be classified as missing middle, but there's always a need for 3 buildings, right? You shouldn't just jump immediately to the 6-story, right, apartment. There's like a couple pages in the book that define this as upper missing middle. And what's important about this is like these buildings are a couple stories taller, a little bit deeper, and it seems like a really like maybe overthinking this, but you really need 2 different zoning districts for those 2 different. Next slide. And these are just some examples, and I think you would agree that these buildings are no longer house. They're not quite what we call a block scale. But so we like that. So plant that seed in your head too of like, there's missing middle, these core missing middle types, duplexes, fourplexes, and there's this upper missing middle. Next slide. Go through some of these types and give some examples. Next slide. So one of my goals in sort of this advocacy, the work that we do, the teaching we do, and giving presentations like this is I want everybody to become literate and be able to communicate about housing types, this broad range, this whole catalog of missing middle housing types. So this is like a challenge for all of you, regardless of what your background or area of expertise is be able to, so you can ask a very basic question when you think about like which group of these types are appropriate in a specific neighborhood. Like is a really great conversation piece. It's like always, it's never just one. It's usually like 3, 4, 5 of these. And so I just encourage you to dive into this information on missingmiddlehousing.com, or if you have a copy of my book, because that's why we delivered it. Next slide. Right, Dallas, this is back to Bishop Arts. Great examples of missing middle housing. And the architecture varies, but it's also very regionally rooted in Dallas and the region, which is fantastic. Even this yellow brick on the missing middle buildings is very specific to this region. Next slide. Okay, then my favorite type is the fourplex with, you can see 2 units on the ground floor and 2 units on the upper floor. It seems super basic, but almost none of these have been built, especially for sale, in decades. So this is kind of, in my mind, the Rosetta Stone. If we can figure out how to incentivize the delivery of these, especially as condos, like that's going to go a long way in helping address attainability and sort of entry-level housing in particular. And construction defect liability, that's a really sort of technical thing, but I'm going to plant that seed too, is the biggest barrier for the delivery of these types in a for-sale condo format. Next slide. So we included all these tables, hoping that people will copy that and put it into their zoning code. So if you're updating your zoning code and you're trying to allow these types, the data and the metrics are here. It's shareware, please use it. And what's really important is that in thinking about the lot is every particular type, like this fourplex, would typically fit on a lot that's 50 foot wide or bigger. And so you can tie it to a lot width. And just from a technical side, just think about that a little bit. Next slide. There's always concerns. How many people have heard concerns about if we allow, well, it's usually like if we allow multifamily or higher density, but let's say if we allow missing middle, it's going to decrease the value of our neighborhood, right? That comes up, it's one of the top 3 comments or concerns, right? Which you can understand, but I love this example. This is actually from Emily's old stomping grounds, Louisville, Kentucky. It's a community called Norton Commons that I toured recently. And you can see on this map that there are 1-point-something million single family homes, but right in the middle of that same block is this fourplex, and the fourplex units are all selling for $524,000. So number one, it's delivering attainability in a highly desirable neighborhood, but it's actually building value rather than decreasing value. And part of it is it's walkable to a neighborhood main street. Next slide. Okay, back to Bishop Arts. I've never found a better example of sort of why we need to talk about typology and not density. These 2 units you hear, one of them is a fourplex and one of them is an eightplex, but they're the exact same size building, right? So there's no way to tell unless you look, count meters or count mailboxes, right? Walking down the street, it's just like they're all behaving the same way. But the building on the left, next slide, please. Right, this building is actually an eightplex, and that building's a fourplex. So this building here generates a density of about, for those of you who are planners and developers, of about 40 units per acre, and this one generates a density of about 80 units per acre. but they're the exact same size buildings. So once again, this is about, we need to just be thinking differently about the density is not a good metric to be using. It's like, how is a building meeting the street? What's the height, the depth, all those good things that I talked about. And so I've never found this example, so if you want to kind of geek out on missing middle, I encourage you to go to that West Neely and Bishop Avenue location and look at these buildings. Next slide. So we're not assuming that every missing middle opportunity is going to be a blank site where you're tearing down a building or you get a vacant lot. There's actually incremental missing middle, which is just as important. Next slide. So we also have to think about how do we zone for an existing single family home to evolve into a duplex or a triplex or a single family home with 2 ADUs, right? There's going to be just as much, if not more, of that type of incremental evolution of neighborhoods than actually construction on a vacant site. So I just wanted to mention that that's really important. Next slide. We did this, one of the examples where we did this island-wide on Maui fires to demonstrate that we can achieve some of the housing objectives by thinking about incremental missing middle on some really typically deep lots where there are multiple buildings can happen, maybe over generations of a family that owns a lot. Next slide. So, because the problem has gotten so extreme, right, they do all the work. I'm just up here presenting their great work. So, just wanted to mention that. Next slide, please. So first going to go through some of the public sector missing middle solutions. Next slide. So, next slide. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to just touch upon some case studies. I'm not going to get a chance to do a deep dive into any of these, but I wanted to present them so you know they're out there. Most of them you can find online, or we can talk about it in the Q&A afterward, but all of these public sector efforts have in common that we're trying to hit this very small missing middle sweet spot that takes into account feasibility. Will it make a developer enough profit to encourage actual development and housing delivery to happen? That's pretty basic. Second of all, which is harder, is does it incentivize housing types that are attainable, affordable at a lower price point than purchasing or renting something like a single family home? And then for us, the third piece of this is livability. It's not just housing for housing's sake. It's like we want to be delivering housing choices that people want to live in addition to ones that people need. So it's not just, it's like places people will live for a long time. It's the missing middle sweet spot. Next slide. It's actually really, really hard to write a set of zoning standards that get you a solution between, I'll just say this is a small single family house. It's kind of that house in Up that's stranded amongst and then the new townhouses, and then the bigger apartment buildings. Like, it's really hard to actually incentivize that missing middle solution in between those scales. Next slide. But one of the ways we do this is every single time we're doing a missing middle strategy, a zoning code, a missing middle planning effort, we run pro forma analysis. We do the numbers, we do the math, and make sure that it's feasible, delivering sort of a profit margin for the developer, and also delivering attainability. And that's really, really important. It hasn't historically been part of planning. Next slide. Do any of you recognize this thing? This isn't actually from Dallas, but I've seen like thousands of very similar buildings. I just want to really make a strong point that this is not missing middle housing. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The first and foremost, they're not really delivering attainability. If you look at sort of price points for these, you're actually tearing down a house that actually delivers more attainability than what the new units do, but they're also not house scale. And so whenever we're writing zoning, one of the questions we're asking is, are we allowing this? Or if so, where are we allowing this and where are we not allowing it? And how are regulations not allowing it? So, because this is what the market will deliver, that's pretty clear if you allow it for a lot of different reasons. And I understand there's like liability, there's condo, there's a lot of different reasons, but we need to really encourage and incentivize better solutions. Next slide. We also really, really important to visualize potential outcomes, and it seems really basic, doesn't it, to like visualize this, but next slide, you can just see this is just an example of, we were working in a small town of Modesto, California, and people weren't going to be able to visualize like what missing middle housing would look like on a gray field site. So we had to create these illustrations to demonstrate, how you might have small scale business incubators along the corridor, but the rest of the site becomes a mix of missing middle typologies. And you can, I think if you looked at the book and our work, you notice that that's really strong. Visualization is key to building support for these types of efforts. Next slide. So back to this, right? This is what we need zoning. This is the operating system we need, not that one. So it's just, once again, it's not about minor fixes, it's about a complete overhaul and a rethink of the way that we zone for housing. Next slide. In a past life, it seems, I wrote a book on form-based coding or form-based zoning 20 years ago, and it's relevant today, maybe even more relevant than it was 20 years ago. But one thing that we do in our form-based coding is, you may not know this, but like most zoning districts will be like, they'll set a density, maximum density or a maximum FAR, maximum lot coverage, and you hope that the developer will deliver the right type. Like I hope that adds up. Instead, you can just actually ask specifically for, just list the types that are allowed in each zoning district. And you can just be more direct about it. And it solves a lot of issues. So that's one way we can do this. And I just want to note that we've seen a lot of codes that go single family, townhouse, duplex, multifamily. And multifamily is not a type, it's a use. And so you need to introduce like fourplex, sixplex, cottagecore, really expand upon that. Next slide. And then parking. How many have had heated conversations about parking? Okay, I'm glad that this is not right, Dallas solved their parking, which is awesome. Great, congratulations, that's a great milestone. For those of you who are from maybe a smaller community or outside of Dallas, this is an example of a missing middle neighborhood we designed on a greenfield site, no transit, everybody needs to drive. It's in Nebraska, so it snows, and it's parked at one space per unit off street. The world didn't end. The rest of the parking's on street, and it's still outperforming every other project in the region, because it's delivering a strong sense of community. But this demonstrates that there's no reason you need more than one parking space per unit anywhere. And I encourage, right, similar to what Dallas did, is I'm a big fan of like eliminating parking requirements and letting the market decide. Next slide. Okay, so we challenged ourselves about 5 years ago of how can we go into a community and spend only like 2 to 3 months, maybe 4 months, be very cost efficient, and give the city a list of recommendations that will be very effective in having them fix their comp plans and their zoning codes. Next slide. So we created this process that we call a missing middle scan and a missing middle deep dive. And the first place we did it was in Greenville, South Carolina. Great, great town, sort of rapidly growing, very desirable. But we call this the diagnosis before the surgery. So it's like the city was about to do their comp plan, just getting started in it actually in this case, gonna do the zoning code update. So they brought us in to do this missing middle work. I wanna say that, sorry, it wasn't actually the city that hired us, and we're seeing this more and more. It was a nonprofit group called Impact Greenville. That was a group of developers, mostly local realtors with some builders and developers that funded this process to advance the missing middle discussion in Greenville. Next slide. For the county and the city. So we do 5 things in this. We frame and introduce the concept of missing middle housing, very similar to what I'm doing today, but in a document format. like in a very visual, a lot of photographs, a lot of illustrations to like start the conversation. Next slide. Then we do a missing middle priority map of identifying based on an analysis process that we've developed over the years to identify where a city should prioritize missing middle. And what was great about this application is Greenville is they took this missing middle priority map and adopted it in their new comprehensive plan. And so they immediately had policy that the staff could use to dive into these targeted areas and do planning and zoning updates. So really cool application. Next slide. Then we sort of pull up the hood of the comp plan, the zoning codes, any neighborhood or area plans, and we really dive deep into these to identify every single barrier for missing middle housing. Next slide. And then we graphically test the zoning code. We do maximum building envelope, what the regulations actually encourage, and then what an ideal missing middle build-out would be. Next slide. Does anybody see what's wrong with this potential allowed building envelope? I don't know how this had been in place for over 50 years. We took the most common lot size, which was 60 by 200 in this RM20, so it allowed 20 units per acre hypothetically, and allowed 40 feet in height. But for single family homes, it had a 5-foot side setback. But for anything non-single family, it had two 25-foot side setbacks. You can see in the image. So that the allowed building envelope was only 10 foot deep on the most common lot size in this zoning district. So right, that's a problem. And I don't know if maybe that was done on purpose because they didn't want anything but single family homes. Next slide, but that's pretty common. So we end up this process with a detailed checklist for the city staff to go in and fix the comp plan and the zoning codes. We occasionally come back for peer review, but that's been a really effective process. Next slide. We're currently in process of doing this for the city of San Antonio. We're super excited about that. That's a little bit bigger than a lot of the places where we've done this particular application. Next slide. So citywide strategies. Next slide. We recently completed this just last year, and this is the most comprehensive and robust missing middle strategy we've ever done for a city. Sacramento, California, just north of the Bay Area. Great town. Next slide. State capital. If you Google missing middle housing in Sacramento, a website will come up, and then if you click on a documents button, you'll come to, there's 4 major documents. And the one I want to emphasize here is a displacement risk analysis or displacement assessment toolkit. And we're doing this on all of our projects now. We're working with partners, in this instance it was Cascadia, to do data-driven analysis to make sure that we're not pushing development into the higher risk, lower value, historically minority communities, right? So that this was a huge priority for the city council. And that was a big part of this process, and we're now doing it in places like Nashville and Asheville, North Carolina. So next slide. Once again, so I'm still kind of surprised that this ended up being as progressive, because it usually gets watered down a little bit. This was happening in combination with the general plan update or the comp plan update, and we were actually able to eliminate density caps citywide. There's no density caps. But the only way you have to set a cap, so there's a cap to the development potential, and then our missing middle strategy went in to shape the development into a range of missing middle typologies. Next slide. And I just wanted to show, this is really important. We can talk a little bit more afterwards if people want to know more, but what this diagram on the left shows is that with business as usual, giving single family homes and plexes the same amount of development potential, the single family home or the McMansion is always going to have a higher rate of return in these higher value markets than a fourplex. So what we did is we did a sliding scale FAR. This is a very technical thing. This is the first time we've done this, where the more units you deliver, the more development potential you get, and it incentivizes and gives a higher rate of return for the developers. Next slide. And we were able to demonstrate with scenario modeling that not only is it beneficial to developers, but it's also delivering almost a $200,000 decrease in the average unit price based on this citywide comprehensive strategy. So it's I'm super excited about this. I'm hoping we can just do more of this all across the country. Next slide. Memphis 3.0 really quickly. What I like about this is it's a really great example of the city not stopping at an adoption of a comprehensive plan. We worked with them on Memphis 3.0 that had a lot of really great missing middle policy within it. Next slide. But what was great about the city is immediately they hired us to do 7 area plans in parallel for the focus neighborhoods identified in the comp plan. And it included sort of streetscape improvements, infill studies of these missing middle housing types based on lots, and then economic analysis of costs and implementation strategies. So I just like this of, like, let's not stop at being happy with having policy adopted, let's implement that and make it possible for local developers to deliver. Next slide. Next slide. And then I just wanted to mention that we're also, over the course of the last 3 to 4 years, our work has really elevated up to the regional and even the statewide scale, which we're super excited about this. Next slide. Just a couple of examples. We were hired by the Washington State Department of Commerce to do a shared missing middle toolkit for the Puget Sound region. It's 82 jurisdictions can pull a missing middle toolkit off the shelf, and with very minor modifications can adopt it to deliver missing middle. Like, that's the sort of scale that this really needs to happen at. And then our Chicago team recently worked for the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus to do this really great missing middle housing toolkit that you can look up online as well. Next slide. And then the state of Utah. I'm not sure if you, but the Governor Cox is a huge housing advocate. We were hired to do an online missing middle platform that's educational, and it gives local jurisdictions some sort of first steps to communicating about and implementing missing middle in their planning policy and their zoning. So you can look at that system online. We're pretty excited about that as well. Next slide. Okay, this is my last section. So how are the developers responding? So we often get this of like, oh, our local developer said there's no way this is going to pencil out. Even if you make the changes, like, we can't do this, there's no market for it, nobody's going to buy, nobody's going to rent. So, well, our projects can really, and a lot of our colleagues can demonstrate differently. Next slide. So I love this type. This is an example of what happens when a city removes density caps but regulates a missing middle scale or upper middle. This one's kind of right between missing middle upper. And this is we designed this in Santa Maria, California. Next slide. This better image. So great courtyard housing type, 3 stories at the busier street, scales down to 2 stories. But this also is one of those, it generates 130 units per acre. And you would never guess that, because the only reason that it does that is it has smaller units. So once again, we go into a community, the opportunity, because the density cap was removed, is our client can deliver high quality workforce housing, courtyard housing, under that new zoning. Next slide. Next slide. So this is the River House Cottage Court, and we did the master plan for this in conceptual typology design, but not rocket science, but this is 8 single-family homes on 1.4 acres. It delivers a density of about 9 units per acre, and sort of like, even in a lot of cities, once again, this is like considered higher density, but it's a really approachable type. There's 4 ADUs that were sold sold with 4 of the primary units. A really successful example. Next slide. And then 2017, we were approached by a local developer builder in the Omaha Metro. And I was thrilled about this because I have roots from my family. I grew up in Nebraska. And I kind of felt like if this could be proven at scale in Nebraska, it can work anywhere. $1.25 a square foot rents was the top end of the market. And so next slide, just show you this really quickly. It's mostly completed. About 40 acres of the 50 are built out, almost 600 units, ranging from duplex up to eightplex. Next slide. These are all rental. These could be condos, but this is rental. But the numbers represent the number of units in each of the buildings. So we did the master plan and introduced these types. And do you think this feels like a typical apartment project? Absolutely not. And so, right, the idea is we're delivering a neighborhood, and what we're finding is downsizing baby boomers really love this project. They love being able to sit out on their front porch, don't have any maintenance, right? And so I think this is a model we're now doing in Athens, Georgia, Montana. It's happening all over, and I can't wait to see these being delivered as condos. Next slide. Okay, cul-de-sac Tempe. How many people of you in the crowd have heard of cul-de-sac Tempe? It's usually the younger folks in the crowd that are on Instagram or other social media because they have an awesome social media presence, but this will be the largest car-free community in the country when it's completed. It's now got 300 residents. Proof of concept has happened. One of the cool things they did is they did this little Choya market. Every Thursday, the day after the site was graded, and they started creating a sense of place and a supportive environment for local businesses from the very start. Next slide. So it's 16 acres, it generates about 40 units per acre if you're sort of thinking in that way. The design from the plan, the buildings, and the landscape is all very, very specific to an extreme desert climate. They've had like record-breaking 115 plus weather. I think 60 straight days of over 110 degrees, if you can imagine. So we're making that livable. Next slide. No parking for residents. This is the main neighborhood plaza. These great small business incubators, and now 24 businesses in the project. All small local businesses. These are 500 square foot incubators that have been hugely successful. Next slide. This is the courtyard living that the project delivers. That was an important part of the design approach and the desire to sort of foster a strong sense of community. Next slide. Public art with local artists was a really important part of this to sort of root it in the place and make it part of the community and to support local art. Next slide. And then once again, 24 small locally owned businesses, a lot of minority-owned businesses, which is super awesome to see. We're super excited about this. Next slide. Okay, the last one. Florence, Alabama. I'd never been to Florence, Alabama prior to working here. It's a great small town that has a great music culture, but 13-acre site. This is the Main Street image. Next slide. 13-acre site, former hospital. There's a lot of these sprinkled around, maybe even more coming. 181 units, about 14 units per acre blended. So there's a Main Street, there's the missing middle piece, and then there's single-family homes on the outer perimeter to transition into the existing residential neighborhood. So really thoughtful transitions. Next slide. And this is the courtyard living that we're delivering in this project. And there's a Frank Lloyd Wright house 2 blocks away, so we're kind of riffing off the Prairie style in this particular project, and I'm really excited about these courtyard types that will be delivered. Now, vertical construction has started. This won a gold medal National Home Builder Award last week. Next slide. Okay, advocacy. Next slide. Just want to mention, ARP is a great partner. They're probably the biggest advocates for missing middle housing out there from a non kind of professional related standpoint. Like when my father-in-law emailed me on a Saturday morning and said, I got my ARP newsletter and they're talking about missing middle housing, is that you? Like I knew we were reaching the right audience. Right? So like 40 million members, kind of important for them to be talking about this, thinking about this. So great partnership, free, downloadable document. It's a great introduction if you need to give something to your council members, your planning commissioners. Start here. Next slide. A couple closing thoughts. Thank you for your patience. Next slide. I'm a missing middle geek. My poor son, when I'm playing Monopoly, I realized that what's missing from Monopoly? Real estate. Missing it? So I had to take the homes and make a cottage court. So like, I'm thinking about this all the time, so I'm always thrilled to come to a new place to plant some seeds or water some seeds about this. Next slide. I think most of my books have sold, which is awesome, thank you. I don't know if there's any left, but if there are, We can do that afterwards, but just a thank you for coming. And if you want to connect with me, I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. Sometimes it's missing middle related, sometimes it's zoning related, sometimes it's just an article that on housing or something similar that I thought, but feel free to reach out and connect. Next slide. I love that Emily mentioned that this is a movement, and I would have never expected when we did this in 2011, started this, that it would become such an impactful movement. And I'm always thrilled to come to an event like this where the backgrounds of everybody is so different, right? It's not just planners, it's not just developers, it's not just architects, it's not just realtors, it's community advocates, it's pretty much everybody. And what I like about it is everybody really, regardless of what your professional background is, needs to play a role in the delivery of housing choice, because the context is so dire in terms of lack of affordability and lack of choice. And so I love when I find this sort of thing. This is a group called Neighbors for More Neighbors, and this was that we were using in Washington. I just love this creative adaptation and use of the missing middle concept. Next slide. Well, with that, I'm just going to say thank you for coming. Please do step up and play a role. Thanks to the Dallas Housing Coalition, the City of Dallas, and all the other sponsors for making this event happen today. We'll open it up for some Q&A.
To this wonky thing about zoning or something, and I didn't realize I was coming to church. I'm a convert. I have kind of a unique situation. I grew up in a 1950s ranch-style house that I still live in, that my parents bought in 1961 for $19,000. It's currently appraised at $800,000. And that's fine. I like living there. It's not for sale. But I live in ground zero of McMansionistan. It is the biggest concentration of rebuilt stuff like that. I live in Dallas. Our two retail shopping centers in the wider area that I live in, our two retail shopping centers at Preston Forest and Preston Royal are zoned community retail. And especially at Preston and Royal, we have a very unique setup where in the broader McMansionistan neighborhood, there are some 1960s, two-story, very well-maintained condominiums, very affordable, about 200 units right next to one quadrant of the shopping center, adjacent. And then also immediately adjacent is a smaller neighborhood of single-family houses and duplexes. You don't see many duplexes in my end of town, but I know where they are, and they're adjacent to this shopping center. They were built in the late 80s.
Sounds like they're not scary.
Yeah, so we have kind of this almost missing middle next to that shopping center. And we have a current zoning change application for a 28-story skyscraper, a 24-story skyscraper, and a couple of 10 stories.
Okay.
Where can we get analytics to show our plan commission that that's not missing middle housing? Where can we find those analytics? How do we get it?
I mean, you can reach out to us. I mean, that's not how we define missing middle, and it's especially with the concrete construction types. It's really hard unless the city can require it. In Texas, you can't require affordability, is that correct? You can't do inclusionary zoning, but anyway, so if you can send me an email, I can send you some resources. What I do want to say is like this zoning change thing is a product of a dysfunctional system. And in almost every city in the country, zoning became a negotiation because it didn't work, right? And so there's a high level of unpredictability for most people, whether you're a community member or even a developer. So that's part of what a zoning code update is going to address, right? Is trying to just make it more predictable for everybody and incentivize the right kind of things. But other than that, I can't respond to your context specifically, other than it sounds like a super interesting existing neighborhood. Yeah, it has a good mix of types. So just keep advocating and send me an email and I can send you some resources. Yeah.
Hey Dan.
How are you?
Good. So I bought your book when it was new, but I only actually finally read it maybe a couple years ago, and you know that happens. They just sit on the bookshelf. But it was really amazing. It's very different from other housing books. It's a lot more from the design perspective, and I should say I think housing reformers are focusing a lot on things like building code and single stair and the international residential code, et cetera. And I feel like you were kind of you presaged that. You were one of the first people really pushing that direction. So super appreciative of that. And I say all this partly because it's true, partly because I have a more critical comment. So I have to be nice at first. I feel like sometimes the way you talk about like the upper middle, missing middle, can come across as like this is bad, and it should only be your kind of 2.5 story below missing middle. And I hear you talking about like what's appropriate for a certain place or not. So I'm curious to hear you talk about how you think about those different scales and where they're appropriate, because I think sometimes it can come across as like if a neighborhood is mostly single family now, you can only upgrade to the 2.5 story missing middle. But I think there are some places where the market has gotten so far ahead, the demand is so high, it's very central in your transit, et cetera, where that upper middle or even taller might be appropriate. So how do you think about that, when you're working in a new city or just generally?
It's a great question. If you don't know Shane Phillips, he's a great nationally known housing advocate. But I do want to mention, like, there's a lot of people that might see this and be like, oh, there are only 4 missing middle. And like, we understand that there are places for missing middle, there's places for upper missing middle, and there's a lot of places for even much bigger, more urban buildings and places. We're not advocating that every place should only have missing middle, so thank you for the comment. I think that what we are finding is that, for example, most of California, where we're both from, the core missing middle types don't pencil out on existing lots with existing buildings. So you almost immediately need to then go in a strategy as a city to upper missing middle. And like my city, the city of Berkeley, California, just after 4 years of work adopted a missing middle ordinance. And it's more of upper missing middle because that's what penciled out. They ran the numbers. We see that a lot. Nashville is the same way, right? The land values are above and almost anywhere in the city and the county where missing middle is not feasible. I think that's why running those numbers, doing the pro forma analysis is so key, because there are points in which a city started a process with us and if the message was we're going to deliver missing middle, then we're like, oh crap, like it doesn't pencil out. So we have to say, like, we just have to be really upfront about it. Like the buildings are going to need to be a little bit bigger, but that's what's necessary if you want to achieve your housing goals. So it's a really good point. So thank you.
Hi, really great to hear you speak about your book. I feel like sometimes books can feel very technical and intimidating, but hearing from the author really helps. So my question would be, we've been talking about missing middle housing, and of course housing is the priority. It's very central to transportation and things like that. Do you know of any groups or people thinking about the missing middle commercial? Because when you were pointing out some of the great master plan communities, the thought in the back of my head was, is everyone from this, great missing middle master plan community driving to the same Costco that everyone from the same 20 subdivisions is driving to on the weekend, And of course, Rome wasn't built in a day, but yeah, is there anything, any groups that, you're working alongside of, or anyone doing that sort of work for that, to kind of make that sustainable local economy more viable?
Yeah. I showed glimpses of it, but every single one of our projects, we kind of have shifted more to talking about missing middle neighborhoods, because the neighborhood's just as important as the housing itself. And so all of our projects either are located near an existing neighborhood main street with like a good walk score, or like we're doing a project in Erie, Pennsylvania that's in a series of lots that are a 7-minute walk to downtown Erie, for example. And it performs better. I was in Orlando last week speaking at National Association of Home Builders International Builder Show. That's a lot to say, but I gave a presentation on this topic. It was missing middle and neighborhood main streets. And so we're starting to, I think if you could just look at our projects, you can see it's inherent. Like the cul-de-sac in the Nebraska project in a really greenfield site had that small scale flex space on the ground floor that did get a pizza shop and a yoga studio.